Okay, I will read your short profile first. Okay, Rahul Bhatia is an amazing learning engineer at Rakuten. His primary focus involves driving useful business insights from large data sets and helping organizations generate business value and revenue using a data-driven approach. Prior to this, he has spoken at Python Malaysia 2019 on interpretable machine learning using Python, right?
Yeah,
Okay, in this session, Rahul will deliver a talk about top-notch categorical encoding using Python. So, for the participant, if you want to ask question, please put your questions on Hopin's platform because moderator's team will put your questions there. Okay, please, Rahul.
yeah, sure. I will go ahead. Hi everyone. So my name is Rahul, and today I'll be talking about top-notch categorical encoding using Python. So let me talk about the agenda for today. So the agenda goes as follows. We'll start with a short introduction to the data science lifecycle. How do things go in a project? And then we talk about variables, and in particular, what are categorical variables for those who are new, and for those who already know, maybe a quick refresher. Then we talk about the main part of the talk, that is a deep dive into categorical encoding techniques. Or we talk about the intuition behind the technique. We talk about the pros, the cons, and when does a particular technique might be useful for you. Then I have a handy cheat sheet which I'll be sharing with you guys, so you can use that as a reference to sort of understand what technique you should use in under which scenario. Followed by which we talk about a demo and a Python implementation walkthrough. I think that is important because theory in itself has no application, so we'll be talking about that. And in the end, we leave 5 minutes for Q&A. So if you guys have any questions, I'll be more than happy and try my best to answer those. So before proceeding, I am assuming that you guys have some prior experience with data, and everyone who is attending this talk is having a basic knowledge of machine learning. So that is the assumption that I make for the target audience. Before I proceed, let me talk a bit about myself. So my name is Rahul. I come from India and I graduated recently with a bachelor's degree in computer science. Currently, I work as a machine learning engineer at Rakuten. And as Nita mentioned, this is my second time at PyCon. So last year, I delivered a talk at PyCon Malaysia on interpretable machine learning. And other than that, I'm a quant finance enthusiast, been developing and researching algorithms and strategies for equity and derivative markets in my idle time. And yeah, feel free to connect with me over LinkedIn, Twitter, and GitHub, and I'll be more than happy to connect with you. So let's start with the short introduction. So before talking anything about the categorical variables, let's talk about the data science project lifecycle. So I know most of you might be familiar with this, but I think it's necessary to touch base on this. So the first step that we start when the data science project is to understand the business requirements. So you define the problem, who is your customer, and what are the business constraints that you might have for the problem. Next up, once that is done, we focus on data acquisition. So your data could be sitting in a SQL database, it could be in a log file, or it could be in a Hadoop or a Spark cluster. So you get the data. Then the third step comes, which is data preparation, exploratory data analysis, and feature engineering. So basically, you clean the data, you perform certain pre-processing steps, you visualize your data. Once that is done, we go to step 4, that is modeling and evaluation of your machine learning models. So you basically build out the machine learning models after step 3 and you evaluate them. Once that is done, you move on to model interpretation and communication of your results. This is something that I talked upon last year at PyCon Malaysia, which is again a very important part, especially in some of the sensitive sectors like healthcare. Once that is done, we move on to model deployment. After that, you go to real world testing, and then it's all improvement and optimization. So I see that a lot of people focus more on the modeling part, But an equally important part is feature engineering, which people often miss out or do not pay that much attention to, which I think is really important, because the more attention you pay to step three, the smoother and the easier it's going to be for you down the lane. So this was a bit brief on the data science project lifecycle. Now let's talk about categorical variables or features in general. So when we talk about machine learning, so basically you have two types of features. You could either have numeric features or you could have categorical features. Now, when I talk about numerical features, you have basically two types of features. One would be continuous features, and the other one would be discrete features. Now, when I talk about categorical data, you basically have two types of features. Again, you have the ordinal features and the nominal features. So for the ordinal features, there is some sort of order associated with these. So an example could be good, better, and best. So basically here you see that good has an order, and then best and better. And if I talk about nominal, so nominal, the example could be a color. So let's say red, yellow, and green. So there is no order associated as such with these. This was a brief on the categorical variables. Now let's talk about at a very high level, what all techniques do we have to encode categorical data, because most of the machine learning models that we have today consider numbers instead of categories. So you need to find some way to convert your categories to numbers or vectors, to be more precise. So these are the encoding techniques that you have at a very high level. So starting with let's say the traditional techniques that we have. So we have techniques like one hot encoding, count encoding, label encoding. These are pretty simple and traditional techniques which can work well depending on the cardinality of a categorical variable. But again, we do need certain sophisticated algorithms when you have a lot of distinct categories in your categorical feature. So then we have monotonic relationships. So basically you have techniques like weight of evidence, mean encoding, target encoding, and etc. So sometimes what happens is that establishing a monotonic relationship with the target is essential. So let me give an example. Let's say you work for an insurance company, and in insurance there is a basic trend that the premium for the insurance decreases as the age of the person increases. So you might want to establish, let's say, a monotonic relationship between your independent and your dependent features. So that's when you would go for a monotonic relationship. And then there are advanced techniques such as feature hashing and embeddings. So these are generally used when you have very high cardinality data. So these can be really useful in that scenario. But again, these are not that oftenly used in, let's say, companies or real world scenarios, because there is a cost associated with the interpretability. So these traditional techniques that I talk about here are very much interpretable. And as and when you go towards advanced techniques, you start losing out on the interpretability. So embeddings are like a total black box. You cannot really understand, given an embedding, that what was the category that it had. So there is a cost associated with interpretability. If interpretability is not an issue, you are more than welcome to go for the advanced techniques. But if that is a important business constraint, you might as well prefer sticking to the traditional techniques. So going forward, we'll talk about each one of these techniques and the intuition behind them and the pros and cons behind each of these techniques. And before going forward, I would like to give a word of caution. So always split your data set first into train and test set before applying any encoding techniques. And once you do that, you should only apply the encoding techniques to the training set and then propagate what it learned to the test set. Otherwise, you run on the risk of data leakage and overfitting, which is the last thing you want as a data scientist or a machine learning engineer. So yeah, let's just talk about each one of these techniques. So I'm sure most of you might be aware about this, but let's just touch base and maybe a quick refresher for those who already know. So one hot encoding can be done in two ways. Basically, you can have k dummy variables or you can have k minus one dummy variables. So let's talk about an example in which we have, let's say, the categorical variable, which is color. So it's a nominal variable, we all know that. And let's say it has categories such as red, yellow, green, and red. So now you will just one hot encode this, and one denotes that, okay, red is present in this row, yellow and green are not. And then similarly, you can see we can do this for each and every row. So this is using k dummy variables, but if you have, let's say, k distinct categories, you can do this thing in k minus 1 dummy variables. So if you have red, yellow, and green, you can just have one column for red and one for yellow. And if there is red present, so you have one for red and zero for yellow. Vice versa, if red is not present and yellow is present, you have a zero and one. And if green is present, that means neither of red or yellow is present, so you have zero and zero. That represents green. So using k minus 1 dummy variables, you can always preserve all the information, and you can have one dimension less in the output data frame. So in general, you would prefer using k minus 1 dummy variable always, but there might be certain scenarios where you might want to avoid using k minus 1 dummy variables. So one such scenario could be when you're using tree-based algorithms for modeling. One of the best example that I could give is random forest. So random forest does consider sometimes the subset of your entire data set. So most machine learning algorithms might consider the entire data set at once while training your model. But then there are algorithms like random forest which might consider a subset. So in that case, you want to use the full k dummy variable instead of k minus 1. That's the first scenario. The second scenario where you might want to avoid k minus 1 dummy variables is when using recursive feature elimination for feature selection, because again here you consider each feature and then recursively try to eliminate that. And since you are trying to get each feature, so using k minus 1 dummy variables, you might miss out on one feature, and that might be the most important feature for your use case. So this could be really bad once you do that. And the third case is when the interpretability of every variable is of utmost importance to you. So when each variable is really important from an interpretability point of view, you should avoid using k minus 1 dummy variables. Let's talk about some of the pros for one hot encoding and some of the cons for that as well. So talking about the pros, it's really easy to implement. As you can see, it's really fast when you have limited cardinality. And the best thing is it doesn't make any assumption about your frequency distribution of the underlying category. So these are some of the pros that you have for one hot encoding. The second one is it's highly interpretable. So whenever you have an interpretability constraint and you have really low cardinality for the categorical feature, you might want to go with one hot encoding. And the third one is that it works really well with linear models, such as logistic regression and linear regression. As long as your cardinality is beyond a threshold, this can really work well and is really simple and easy to implement. Let's talk about some of the cons for this one. So the first disadvantage would be the curse of dimensionality. I'm sure most of you might be aware about this. So as and when you have more and more dimensions in your data set, you start going towards overfitting your model, and this might not be the best thing. And this is something that you should take care of. That you should have really been using one hot encoding when you have a limited cardinality. Again, there are fixes for that. You can use dimensionality reduction techniques such as PCA or t-SNE to tackle this. But again, you should avoid using one hot encoding when you have a really high cardinality. The next thing is it's not really suitable for tree-based models such as decision tree or random forest, or even boosting for that matter. So basically, when you have categorical variables with high cardinality, you should not go for tree-based models because there's a very high chance that you can overfit. And then again, one of the other disadvantages that you don't have a lot of additional signal that can help increase the predictive power of your model. Some of the other techniques do give you some additional signal which can be helpful, but I guess that one hot encoding doesn't do that, so you should be aware about that. Then there is a variation around one hot encoding, which is one hot encoding of top k categories. So this is a very famous technique used in one of the winning solutions for the KDD 2009 Kaggle competition, wherein what they did was they, let's say, picked up some number k and they only one hot encoded the top k frequent categories. So if I give you an example of country, let's say, and you have, let's say, the top three, I pick, let's say, the top three frequent countries which have the most number of observations in my data set. So let these be USA, China, and India, for example. So what I would do is I would only one hot encode USA, India, and China. And for rest of the countries, which is, let's say, Germany, Canada, or any other country, I would just assign a zero. So this is something which you can try when you have really high cardinality data and you want to stick with one hot encoding. And this is one of the most popular solutions among Skagglers. So this is another variant of one hot encoding which you can try. Let's talk about the next one, which is binary encoding. So binary encoding is to convert a category to binary digits, and then subsequently each binary digit creates a single feature column. This is again very much similar to one hot encoding, but it creates a lot less columns. So the number of columns that it creates for a categorical feature would be the ceiling of log n to the base 2. This will be the maximum columns that it has. So to give an example, let's continue with the country example. Let's say you have these countries. So at first, what this technique would do is to assign an order, and this order is strictly based on the appearance. There is no ordinality inclined here. This is totally random. So USA comes first, it gives it order one. China comes second, it gives it second. India third, and so on. And once you have this order, so it will simply take the binary of this. So the binary of 1 is 001, of 2 is 010, and so on. And once it does that, so you have 3 bits for the binary variable. It will simply create 3 additional variables for this, and then you will have this encoded like this. So 001 gets like this, and then 010 gets encoded like this, and so on. So what is the advantage over here? The advantage is that you don't blow up the feature space by the cardinality. So if I have, let's say, 200 countries, so the maximum that I will have here would be only eight new features. So that is one of the advantages over one hot encoding. What is the disadvantage? It's pretty obvious that you are trying to compress 200 different categories to 8. So you are definitely losing out on some of the information. This was binary encoding. Now let's move on to the next one, which is label or ordinal encoding. So again, I'm sure most of you might be aware about this, but let's just go through this. So let's say you have an ordinal categorical variable, which is, let's say, level, and it has the categories, which is, let's say, low, medium, high. So you can just assign some sort of numbers here. So let's say assign low as 1, medium as 2, and high as 3. And again, this labels is assigned arbitrarily. So you can provide a mapping. So in this case, you know that, okay, high has a higher order than medium and low. So you can assign it 3, and low and medium 1 and 2 respectively. But again, it's really good for a quick benchmarking and setting up a quick baseline model. But again, you should have some sort of logical mapping, and one of the variant to that is target guided label encoding. So you can establish a sensible mapping based on the target or the dependent variable. So let's say you have color and these are the values for the target. So now you can see that red appears, target 0 appears when the category is red one time, and target 1 appears again one time. So based on the target, you can assign the mapping here to the color, and you see that red gets assigned 2, yellow 1, and green gets assigned 3, because yellow has the target 1 most of the times, green has it never, and red has it one time. So based on that, you can assign this. Let's talk about some of the pros for the label encoding. So basically, it's easy and fast to implement again. It doesn't add the extra dimensions to your feature space, as was the case with one hot encoding. And this technique has been known to work well for some of the tree-based algorithms, especially when you have ordinal categorical variables. Let's talk about some of the cons for this particular technique. So it doesn't handle new categories in your test set. So if you have an unknown category which wasn't there in your training set, but it has in your test set, so you are not able to do that. And it doesn't work really well with linear models if you're using the arbitrary mapping. So if you use the target guided variant, it can establish a monotonic relationship between your categorical feature and the target, which might be a desirable behavior in some cases. So I talked about the insurance example. This might be a desirable behavior there. And in that case, this technique might work well with linear models. But again, in most cases, this is not a really great idea unless your categories have a clear order associated. As we saw that here we had low, medium, high. So this was a clear order. But if this is not the case, this might not be a really great technique, and the target guided variant may lead to overfitting in some of the cases. So that is something that you should be careful about. Talk about the next encoding technique, which is count or frequency encoding. So you do have, let's say, zip code. So now zip code can have a really high cardinality and a large number of unique categorical variables. So what you would do is you would just replace the particular zip code with a count in the data set. So basically you have, let's say, zip code 99501. It has only one appearance, so you have one. For 88432, it has, let's say, three appearances, so you replace that by three, or you can replace it by the frequency. That is something that you have. Again, the pros and cons are pretty simple and listed. You can read it through here. uh, I won't go through each one of these because we might run short of time and I have a lot to cover. So these are some of the pros and cons of the count encoding. Let's talk about target or mean encoding. So again, let's say you have a variable which is, let's say, company, and this is, let's say, car companies. So we have Tesla, Mercedes, Benz, and BMW, and these are the specific targets. So what you would do is you would replace Tesla with the mean of the target, and in this case you have, let's say, two categories, both are two observations, both have a target of one. So you would replace Tesla with a mean that is one. Mercedes you would replace with a mean with a zero point 0.5 because the mean here is 0.5, and BMW also you would replace it with one. So what are some of the pros of this technique? So this is again easy and fast to implement. It doesn't add extra dimensions like one hot encoding, and this is known to work really well with tree-based algorithms, unless it doesn't overfit. So let's talk about some of the cons for this technique. This can be really leaky, and there are a couple of variants which we'll talk about, which are a bit less leaky. But again, since this is leaky, this can be highly prone to overfitting. And different categories with the same mean of target are considered the same, which may lead to loss of valuable information. So let's talk about this example. You have Tesla and BMW, both have a target mean of one, and the model might consider these two to be the same categories, but clearly these are different categories and these are different companies, Tesla and BMW. So this is something which you should be careful about. Let's talk about one of the variants for that. So you have leave one out. So essentially what you will do is you will leave out this row for the mean, and you will compute the mean of Tesla excluding this row in the other rows. So let's take an example of Tesla. So the other two rows have respectively the target, which is 3 and 1. So we will replace it with the mean of these two, which is 2. Similarly, for this one, you will exclude 3 and get the mean of 0 and 1, which is 0.5, and so on. So what are the advantages of this one compared to the previous one? It's a bit less leaky, but still this can overfit. And this is again easy and very straightforward to implement, but it's not very suitable for real life scenarios. Let's talk about another variant to this one, and which is what you call as the James Stein target encoding. Now, this is a really popular implementation provided here, and this is really a popular technique. So what it does is it weighs to the group mean, and basically what it does, it assigns more weightage to the group with more number of values. Therefore, a higher W for a category with more number of values, and a lower W for categories with less number of values, where W is basically the group weight. And intuitively this makes sense, because if you have a group with really less number of values, so let's say in this case you have BMW only 2 times or 3 times, then you should assign a less weight to BMW and more to others. So let's talk about some of the pointers here. So it's much practical out of all the three variants we discussed for the target based encoding. And this is again some of the sophisticated variations of this one is being adopted by libraries like h2o.ai and CatBoost, which is really great. And a variation around this is one of the most simplistic yet useful technique to deal with really high cardinality data, which is, let's say, when you have zip codes or when you have, let's say, IP addresses. This technique could really work well in that case. And here is again, I'm leaving a link to a blog post which is really amazing, and you should check this out once this conference ends. Let's talk about the next technique, which is weight of evidence. So weight of evidence is basically this formulation right here. I'm not going into the formulation, you can go through that. So let's talk about some of the pros, since we are running short of time and I also have a demo to present. So some of the pros that it has, since you can see in the formulation, it has the same logistic scale. It is known to work really well with logistic regression, especially when you have a binary classification setting. And the transform features that you get will all be on the same scale, So basically, when you want to check the feature importance of a categorical feature for some sort of feature selection, I think this technique would really shine out in that particular case. Talk about some of the cons. So this won't be defined when the numerator or the denominator is either one, because is zero. I'm sorry, because again log in that case would not be defined, and the weight of evidence won't be defined. But again, this is one of the techniques that is known to work really well with logistic regression. So this is something which you can try out. Let's then move and discuss something about some of the advanced techniques that I mentioned. So feature hashing is a really popular technique, and it's really popular among most Kaglers, especially when the categorical features have a really high cardinality. So let's try to understand hashing with an example, and then we can probably build on top of that. So let's say you have again that same variable company that we are considering, and you have the value, let's say Tesla. So you basically have a hash function which would just convert this Tesla to a fixed size number, and then you can do a modulus of let's say 4, because let's say you want to have compress it down to 4 additional columns. So you have it 4, and then you have the feature index. So what happens here is that let's say you have this company, you have some sort of magical hash function. We'll talk about this, and then you do a modulus of how many number of categories do you want, and you get the feature index. Now what happens is that this again you can just proceed with one hot encoding once you have the feature index. So let's say you have a feature index of 1, so you can just go ahead and have a 1 for the feature 1 and 0 for everything else. And similarly you can see that we can encode this in a similar manner. So let's talk about a bit about this hash function. So one of the hash functions for strings that you can have is, let's say, the sum of all the ASCII characters. So you do a sum of ASCII character of T, the ASCII value of E, S, L, and A, and sum it all to get 505. This is again a very trivial hash function. There is more sophisticated algorithms out there, but again, this is a very useful technique when you have really high cardinality data and you want to filter it down, or you want to condense it to, let's say, a lesser number of dimensions. So this becomes really important for for a lot of real life use cases. So let's say when you have e-commerce companies, they have a lot of categorical data which has high cardinality. Healthcare has it, and a lot many other sectors. And again, the proper choice of hash functions becomes extremely critical in this case. And yeah, a good hash function avoids collisions. So collision is something when you have two values which are hashing to the same number, two different values hashing to the same number, that is basically a collision. So good hash functions should avoid collisions, and should be easy and fast to compute, and should spread the keys uniformly. So murmur hash 3 is one of the examples for some of the really state of the art hash functions. You have md5 and you have a lot more. So what are some of the advantages of this? So this technique is usually fast. So you have so when you have up to a limited number of dimensions, hashing could be really fast. There is no dependency on the target, so it's really less prone to overfitting when we compare it to some of the target guided variants that we saw in some of the previous slides. Hashing is an amazing choice for real life data sets with high cardinality, and coupled with an amazing hash function like MMS3 or MD5, I think hashing can do wonders. And obviously that comes with a cost of interpretability. So you will lose out on interpretability once you hash your variables. But again, interpretability isn't important. In that case, you can go forward with feature hashing. Talking about some of the cons, so compressing to lower dimensions again will lead you to loss of information, and again too many collisions can be a problematic scenario. So you should choose your hash function wisely, and interpretability is lost, as I said. Let's talk about the last technique for the day, and then we'll probably skip to the implementation part. So entity embeddings. So I'm again sure most of you might be familiar or might have heard about this if you work daily with NLP data especially. So this is pretty similar to word2vec, and each categorical variable is mapped to an n-dimensional vector. Now this n can be chosen upon by the data scientist, but a good rule of thumb is to choose the minimum between 50 and half the cardinality of your column. One can always choose a higher number than this, but again that comes with a cost of higher training time. So this is one such example. I have this image. So you can basically see you have a shallow neural network and you try to learn this hidden representation. So if you have, let's say, a categorical variable, which is, let's say, having subjects, physics, chemistry, biology, and all. So you can learn a three-dimensional entity embedding for this one, and you have this three-dimensional vector, which then you can use for these respective categories. So I guess that's all we have for the techniques. And now let's just talk about the cheat sheet that I had mentioned. So this cheat sheet, by the way, is created by Feature Labs. So they are one of the most amazing startups working on automating feature engineering. So I'm sure that you can go through this later because we don't really have the time and we might just want to skip to the implementation. So yeah, it's demo time. You can follow the notebook here after the talk is over. I will just switch to the notebook and start presenting that. So basically, we'll use one of the most important and amazing data sets you have for categorical encoding. So let me just talk about the data set first. So this is the data set. You can visit it on Kaggle and know more about this. And let's just start with this one. So essentially, I'm importing some of the essential libraries and reading in the data set. And again, you see this data set has an ID value, and you have a couple of binary variables. You have a couple of nominal variables, so 10 nominal variables to be precise, and you have 6 ordinal variables, again with different cardinalities. And at the end, you have some cyclical features such as day and month, and then you have your target, which is a binary target, which is 0 and 1. So let's just try to summarize this data set first. For that, again, I'm using an important library which you should know about, that is Pandas profiling. This could give you a profile report in mere one line of code. This is what I have run here. So let it just complete and we can see the report then. So this will basically give us a lot of useful insights about this data set, and this can be really useful for us going down the lane. So it's almost complete, just let it complete, and it's just generating the report structure. And once it is done, we'll be able to derive a lot of useful insights out of this report. Yeah, so you see that this has been completed, and now let's go and check the warnings. This gives you a lot of good insights about your data. So we don't really have the time, but feel free to play out with this once the talk is over. So let's talk about the warnings. So it gives you some of the warnings that your variable norm6, norm5, norm7 have high cardinality, and then again you have a lot of missing values. So just for the sake of simplicity and completing this on time, let me drop the missing values. And then there is some cyclical feature engineering, which is again one of the feature engineering tricks that you should be aware about. Is you can create cyclic features out of features like day, month, hour of the day, and so on. So basically, you can take the sine and the cosine component. So that is a better way to encode these cyclical features. And again, your bin 4 and bin 3 has this n and y, which is basically no and yes, and true and false. So let's just convert them to 0 1. So essentially all the binary variables that you have are now converted to 0 and 1. And now let's just go through the cardinality of each and every variable. So you see that some of these binary variables are okay with 0 and 1, so we'll let them be as it is. And for some of these nominal variables, you see that the cardinality for these ones are low. So what you can do is you can simply one hot encode this. And then for some of these nominal variables, you have really high cardinality. So you can see that this one has 1200 unique values. This one has, let's say, 1500 unique values, and so on. So you have this, you check the cardinality. And as I mentioned that before, any sort of analysis, you should first split the data set. That's what I've been doing here. And again, for these nominal variables, so to encode these, I'm using another package which is category encoders. So let's just first try with a James Stein encoder, which we talked about in the slides, and a one hot encoder for the variables with low cardinality. So I will not run these cells because it will take a lot of time. I have already done that. And let's talk about the results. So once you transform it using these two encoders, you can see that the binary variables are all 0 and 1. The nominal variables are then transformed, as you can see. So the one hot encoded ones are here, and the James Stein encoded ones are here. So you can see that this package works fairly well. And then, as mentioned, you should propagate whatever you have learned to the test set. so that you have the same kind of mapping. And then for the ordinal variables, let's just try and go for an ordinal encoder or label encoder first. So this is what you do. And then let's just go for a first baseline model with this one. So you see, I have a couple of models here. I have logistic regression, I have a decision tree, random forest, and XGBoost. So let me just show you by fitting a random forest first with the above mentioned encoding schemes. uh, you do get a fair enough result. That this is not that great, this is actually not a good result, but you have at least something with a very simple baseline. And again, this data set is imbalanced, so we are not doing anything to handle the imbalance of this particular data set. But again, one of the metrics that you should use is Matthews correlation coefficient in this case. So you can see, so Matthews correlation coefficient, or short to referred as MCC, has values between -1 and 1. And in this case, you can see that it is giving a value of 0.25. So the best case scenario is 1 and the worst is -1. So you're doing fair enough. Maybe not that great, but you're doing fair enough here with a value of 0.25. Let's talk about the approach too. So here, when I use label encoding, I use the arbitrary mapping. What else could have we done? So let me show you the data once again. And in the data, you can see that in these ordinal variables, the first one is novice, grandmaster, and expert. So by my intuition, I know that these are basically the rankings given to Kaggle players, and basically I know that grandmaster has the highest ranking, so I can rank this accordingly. For the ordinal variable 2, I can again assign a ranking by my intuition because I know what these values are. For ordinal variable 3 in the approach 2, I'm simply going to assign a mapping based on the ASCII value. So if a variable has a higher ASCII value, I'm going to assign it that. Ordinal variable 4, I'm going to do the same. And ordinal variable 5, I'm going to go with the sum of the ASCII characters. This might not be a great approach, but it is definitely better than the random mapping that we were getting using the ordinal encoder. So again, I've coded that up here. And again, when we use a random forest, you can see we get a slightly marginal improvement in the Matthews correlation coefficient. So what was 0.25 earlier, we are able to reach close to 0.28 this time. And again, we can again talk about weight of evidence. And I mentioned that weight of evidence is known to work well with logistic reg. So we are almost done with the time. So again, I will just show you the results. And again, when you do this, the results are not here, but you get again a slightly marginal improvement on the Matthews correlation coefficient. So this is something that you can try. And then here is something that I have done on the embeddings. So again, using another package here, which is categorical embedder. What this does is this does a lot of heavy lifting on the neural network thing for you. And basically it converts all of these categorical variables to embeddings that we talked about. And again, it follows the same rule for the number of dimensions. It is the minimum of 50 or half the cardinality. So this is what it is, and you get the embeddings as you can see. So at the end, you get all the embeddings for this one. So you have this particular data frame. For the high cardinality ones, you get an embedding of up to 50 dimensions. And at the end, you have a data frame with 350 columns. Now we did not have the time, but I would have shown modeling on this particular embeddings data frame, but I guess I can leave that up to you. So coming to the bottom line, there is a lot of things that you can try with categorical data. What could work or what could not work highly depends on your data set. What I discussed were just some guidelines that one could try in different situations. And as mentioned, you should always first split the data set and then propagate what you learned from the training set to the test set. One hot encoding is good, and you should always first go for the simpler approaches. If your cardinality is limited, one hot encoding works to work fairly well. But again, it also maintains your interpretability, and you should always keep it simple to the point you can. Cross validation is really important, so you should always cross validate. And again, you should use a metric such as MCC when you have imbalanced data. So here we did not deal with imbalanced data as such, but MCC should be the one, because accuracy can be really a false alarm. And embeddings are really the state of the art. So embeddings give really good performance when you have a really high cardinality. Like in this case, some of the variables have cardinality up to 1500. So embeddings can be really good, but they can be complex, and definitely you lose out on interpretability. In this case, I cannot really make out what this variable meant because these are just like a black box and these are just 50D vector for me. So yeah, you lose out on the interpretability. And I guess we are almost up on time. So if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those. I guess that's all from my end.
Okay, Rahul, it's an awesome thought from you. Thank you for your presence here. And I'm so sorry because it's time is running out. We have to end your session, but can you show your profiles? Everyone can see your profile and contact you
Yeah,
privately.
yeah, sure.
Maybe because they have questions later.
Mhm.
Please.
So what you can do is to access the slides, you can just go through this URL and you will find my social media links here. So if you have any questions or anything, I'm more than happy to connect with you and answer all your queries.
Where they can contact you?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Social media?
Yeah, yeah.
Can you show it again maybe?
Sorry. Can you please repeat? Yeah, so this is the link to
Can
the
you show
slides.
it again? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you can follow the link to the slides.
Okay.
Yeah.
LinkedIn, Twitter, and okay. Thank you, Rahul, for your time. I will say thank you for watching us. This session
Sure.
is and we will meet in next session. Thank you, Rahul.
Yeah, sure. Thanks,
You can
Nita. Thanks
say
everyone for
thank
attending.
you to everyone who's watching you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for attending,
Yeah.
everyone. Hope you have a great day ahead. Bye bye.
Bye, Rahul.